Magic the Gathering's upcoming Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Dungeons & Dragons set has some of the coolest lands that we've ever seen on cardboard rectangles.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, we are here to do a type of spoiler video that I don't normally do, and that is one that's mostly focused on talking about lands specifically. We do have some non-land spoiler cards to talk about, but the majority of what we're going to dive into today is going to be land-based, starting out with this right here. So this is the craziest Evolving Wilds that has ever been made, done in the old school style of an actual Dungeons and Dragons module, and I have to say, for old school players like me, absolutely love this concept. So, starting at the top, Dungeon Module C7, Evolving Wilds, an adventure for characters level 1 to 4. So when we saw that Bugbear one earlier, that was level 17 to 20. This feels more appropriate. You're just going out and exploring the wilds. That's a good adventure for low-level characters. So pretty much everybody knows what Evolving Wilds does, right? It's a land that you tap, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Now it's interesting because this is done as a Dungeons and Dragons cover, it does have that kind of vibe where you kind of focus on the characters. Usually when it comes to Evolving Wilds, you will just see terrain, right? That's how land cards are normally done. But this one shows a couple of heroic individuals. You have this warrior who is just leaping through the air, maybe down into a waterfall, and a soldier standing over there. His cloak is billowing in the wind, and he's got his spear ready. I don't know if this is supposed to be a confrontation between the two, where she's literally like leaping across, or I don't know if this is a forest that is suddenly changing into a river just out of nowhere, right? Because if you look in the back, it seems like the greenery is kind of broken up, but it's quite nice looking for an Evolving Wilds. I really dig this style. And then we have Cloister Gargoyle. Now, we already talked about this a while ago when it was spoiled, like, I don't know, maybe almost a month ago, and we got to find out that dungeons were a concept, but there were certain people who thought this wasn't a real card. So now it's been officially spoiled. We know it's a real card. Cloister Gargoyle is 1 white and 2 for a 0/4. When it enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon, and as long as you've completed a dungeon, it gets +3/+0 and has flying. Now, to me, this is a pretty underwhelming card. Maybe if dungeons end up being a bigger thing in Standard, this will be a bigger deal, but to me, this looks like something that's only ever really going to get any love in Draft. The artwork is interesting because it depicts an inert gargoyle, and you might not even realize it was capable of animating until you look down at its claw and you can see the blood that's dripping down the side of the basin that it is located on. Which could, at first you might see it and think that somebody injured stumbled by and put their hand there, right? If you get a little too close to the gargoyle, though, you might find out that's not the case. So overall, not the most amazing card, but it's definitely got some nice flavor. Then we've got Dungeon Crawler. This is a black reanimation style zombie. So 1 black for a 2/1 zombie. It enters the battlefield tapped. Whenever you complete a dungeon, you may return Dungeon Crawler from your graveyard to your hand. So, I mean, we've seen a number of different creatures, specifically in black, that tend to be 1 or 2 mana. They're 2/1. They basically can recur over and over. Interestingly enough, completing the dungeon is a difficult enough thing to do that Wizards didn't feel the need to add an extra stipulation to this creature saying it can't be used as a blocker, because trying to get it back every turn would actually be exceedingly difficult. The flavor text says, I think of it as giving them another chance to achieve their potential. Oh, Nestist Ras, you're such a nice necromancer. I'm giving you another chance to live a good life, my friend. Crawling on through the dungeon, reaching out of the mausoleum. I'm back from the dungeon! Zombies coming up from the dungeon, endless waves of zombies. That's got the proper D&D feel to it. Now, at the beginning of the video, I did say that we were going to be talking a lot about lands, and from here on in, the rest of the video is land-based. So if that's not that exciting to you, then I hope you enjoyed the video so far and the rest of your day so long. The rest of us, we're going to continue on this land-based journey. So this is the normal version of Evolving Wilds from the D&D set. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what it does because we just talked about that. The flavor text says, parts of Faerun still churn with the magic of arrogant Netherese archmages long dead. That's pretty cool. The idea of like these landforms that are constantly shifting and changing. It's like this mountain that rises up into the sky and rivers flow down off of it. And the landscape is constantly changing because some ancient wizards couldn't help themselves and they wanted to make some kind of magical playground, or they had been around for so long. They're basically like immortals and they've just gotten tired of everyday life. So they need something whimsical, and that whimsy has to be on a huge level. So this is definitely very interesting artwork. The volcanoes up at the top that are smoking and everything with the water just cascading down, it gives a very interesting vibe to it. After that, we're going to start talking about the basic lands. Now, normally, I don't talk about basic lands in spoilers, but the Dungeons & Dragons lands do something really cool that other basic lands don't. Most basic lands just have the mana symbol there in the middle, right? But these have little story tidbits, like adventure hooks almost, which I really dig. So if you look at this plains, you can see it's like a snowy kind of wasteland with gigantic chunks of like boulders of snow. And it says, you've traced the tensions in 10 towns to the dwindling reindeer populations. But what has been hunting them? So this gives the flavor of you're out there, the sun is blinding, it's reflecting off of all this snow. You're trying to figure out what's been destroying these local reindeer. Maybe you see a hint of blood on the snow and you look up, but you're snow blinded, so you don't see there are crazy ice trolls that have been marauding around. Maybe it's some other creature, like some kind of snow crab. So one of these giant boulders gets up and it starts coming at you. There's a lot of cool flavor potential here. All right, this plains is a completely different vibe. It says, seeking to learn why the ancestors have fallen silent, you've made your way to their ancient cairns. So this is essentially the land of the dead, but not done in a black aligned style, done in a white aligned style. So these are revered ancestors that you would communicate with to gain knowledge from the past, but all of a sudden, they're not saying anything. So you travel through with this kind of still silence, you know, with respect for the resting dead, but at the same time concerned that maybe they're not resting anymore. I love the flavor of these. All right, and we have 3 of each land type. And this plain says, searching for a vanished caravan that was bound for Silvery Moon, you've come to a bank of mysterious fog. And you can see in the forefront, you've got the plains looking pretty normal. You've got some rocks laying around or whatever, but in the background, there is this wall of fog. And I don't know about you guys, but I've always found fog to feel somewhat mystical. The way it obscures and confounds the senses. Very enjoyable. Let's move on to the next land. Now we're moving into islands. Look at this one. It's an underground island in a cavern. Awesome. In crystal-studded waters far below the surface, you've discovered an incubating egg of mysterious origins. Cool. So maybe that's on the island. Oh, you can see a little dude rappelling down one of these stone, like little stone outcroppings. And yeah, I'm guessing the egg is probably on that little island, given that glow effect to it. I don't know. Very, very cool. A catacomby kind of feel. Who knows what's leaking? Leaking in the water. Who knows what's lurking in the water, right? Maybe there is whatever the parent of what's inside that egg is under the surface of the water. So when you disturb it, all of a sudden the water is just frenetic with activity and a giant beast lurches forward with this, basically the enraged strength of someone who's protecting their young. That is definitely a dangerous scenario. Then we've got this crazy looking island. After careful study, you've determined that the giant ruins serve to track the movement of the planets. and they will soon align once more. That's really cool. You find the ruins of an ancient civilization, and then there's these massive obelisks that look kind of like ancient stone swords, with a line running down the middle and a circle, gigantic circle, bigger than a man. And you figure, what are the purposes of this? And after studying it, you sort out, wait a minute, these actually align up with like the stars and the planets in the night sky. And it looks like we're really getting close to some kind of conjunction where all of these different things. So what happens? Does light beam in through all of these different places and it just like shines in one spot and opens up an ancient dungeon? Or is it basically like by using these giant stone pillars, you study the night sky and determine which stars, celestial bodies, or what have you are relevant to what you're trying to do. And then there's some entryway into a grand dungeon with like tons of different tiles. And if you press the wrong tiles, it shoots out arrows or flames, or just a pit opens up beneath you. But if you know the exact right tiles to touch, then you'll be able to open it up and go inside. And the only way to learn those proper tiles is to study what these ruins have taught you. I really dig this as an adventure hook, man. These are awesome, and I really do believe that Wizards of the Coast should adopt this as a standard issue concept for every set. Adding the flavor text onto the lands, I mean, I guess there may be some people who don't want flavor text on the land, so maybe there'd be some people who didn't like it, but it's such an amazing way to expand on the flavor of a world. Then we've got this island. As your ship clears the edge of Waterdeep Harbor, you notice pirate sails on the horizon. What has made them so bold? Oh, very cool. I like this. You've got a waterside city. You can see the hillside is just packed with little houses and things like that. There's a number of boats and ships out in the harbor, and the question of what is making pirates so bold. Are they ensorcelled? Are they undead beings? Are they being spurred on by greed? Are they being spurred on by fear? There's any number of different scenarios that I can think of, and I really love this particular piece of artwork. It kind of makes you feel like you're floating in the water, right? Just kind of like you're a loose individual, maybe paddling water, looking up at these boats, because it is a low perspective, but I really like this artwork. Now we're going to talk about the swamps. So, this swamp says, as a plague ravages the world above, you've made your way into the Underdark in search of a fungal panacea. Interesting. So the Underdark is the place where the drow elves reside, and there is particular magical emanations, particular magical radiation that infuses beings there. It actually gives the drow, because they live in this underground cavern with these emanations, it actually gives them built-in magical powers that they can use on command. Now, as they spend time away from these emanations, those powers diminish over time and do go away. So you do need continual exposure. But the idea of that same sort of magical emanation / radiation infusing the fungus there and having to go down and brave the dangers of like the underworld, essentially. You've got the dark elves, which are a massive threat. You've got things like umber hulks and all kinds of other nasty beasts that are strong enough to survive down there with the drow and all the other crazy inhabitants of the underworld. But you're there to get basically a cure for a plague that is ending tons of people's lives. So it's worth putting your life on the line. And you can see this swamp has a very noxious kind of vibe. And ultimately, this is the most rocky and least liquid looking swamp I've ever seen. Mostly swamps will show like fetid pools of water, whereas this one in particular really just feels like a rocky cavern, which is an interesting departure. And I love, you can see the glow of the power coming out from under there. And the whole idea that you have to go and get this fungal panacea, but you also have to return within a certain amount of time, right? We're probably given a magic satchel where you're like, put the fungus in here, don't ever let any sunlight be exposed to it or it will be destroyed. And you have X amount of days to get this back to us in time, or it will become inert and lose its magical powers. That has a nice sense of urgency to it. Then we've got a swamp that says your search for a stolen artifact has brought you to the edge of the Mirror of Dead Men. Oh man, that's awesome. It's called the Mirror of Dead Men, and look what's in there. You can see in the background what looks like the remnants of a temple, and in the foreground you can see what was part of a spiral staircase or something. So this probably at one point was originally a city or something like that that was cast down by the gods or foul necromantic magic. You've got the little will-o-wisps kind of flowing up off the water. It's got an interesting sense of adventure, and you know what's going to happen when you get in there. There's either going to be crazy spirits or zombie undead, but it's definitely going to be an adventure. Maybe not one you want to have, but an adventure. Then we've got this swamp. It says, as you trudge through the sewers of Baldur's Gate, it dawns on you, where are all the rats? That would be interesting, right? You're going through the sewers. I don't want to have to travel through the sewers again. I'm going to have to get new boots and all this stuff. And the rats, all this. And then you're going through it and you're like, wait a minute. Last time I was here, there was tons of rats. There is not a single rat. Either something has scared all the rats away, or something has eaten all the rats. Like something's just wiped them out, but you can't see them anywhere, right? That would be unnerving because the unknown of what you're going to travel into. And the artwork has got this like this very dour, gloomy miasma flowing in the air. It's interesting that you're not actually in the sewers in this artwork, but whatever. I guess this is you like entering into the sewers. I'm not 100% on that. Either way, it's got some nice flavor. Now it's mountain time. Oh, it kind of looks like Cyclops Mountain, you know, with the little eye in the middle there. So, you meant to simply rest in Hundlestone, but the miners have told you stories of whispers in the dark below. So you're just traveling through the mountains, right? And then you end up in Hundlestone. I'm just here for the night. And then you hear, oh, there's whispers in the dark below. And it's like, all right, dude, I have to go and investigate. I like the artwork. I like how the tip of the mountain is up in the sunlight, kind of well lit. And then in the foreground, you can see a monk or other adventurer who's getting ready to head up to the ultimate peak. But I like the fact that there's like clouds all around the tip too. It looks like this would be pretty high up in the mountains, unless for some reason these are like really foggy mountains. I'm not familiar with the name Hundlestone. So to me, that's a new one. Either way, very cool flavor. Then we've got another mountain that says, your path lies across the spine of the world, where every cave hides some new danger. And looking at the artwork, you can see why it's called the spine of the world. It looks like the back of a lizard or dinosaur with the spiked ridges going along. And you could picture some massive earth elemental, like lizard-style beast laid down here a long time ago, fell asleep, and then like one day will awaken, and the spine of the world shall once again move across the lands. But you know, it's pretty forbidding. You can see the snow there, you got the moon in the background. It's not as exciting as the last mountain artwork, but it's got some cool flavor. Then we've got a very red looking mountain. You venture deep into the heart of the mountain to determine what can calm its quaking rage. Oh, this is actually an angry mountain you're inside. The spirit of the mountain itself is enraged, and you've got to try and figure out how to calm it down. What's going on? Are the dwarves living there now, like, having a chaotic existence where they occasionally had to deal with goblin raids, but because of the anger of the mountain, the goblin tribes have gone, our god has reawakened! So all the goblins have, like, formed together into massive war bands, and they're raiding the dwarves and raiding nearby villages in the name of their god, and somebody has to be sent in to put the mountain back to sleep, to silence the god, to stop the rage. That is a compelling concept to me, all right? And the artwork definitely has an angry kind of vibe with all this red, and like you've got spikes, stalagmites, stalactites, all of them creating a Jaws kind of effect, many fangs. I like it. Now let's take a look at my favorite color, green. So, this is the first forest. As the sun reaches its zenith on the day of the solstice, a castle shimmers into view on the hilltop, just as the ancient text predicted. That's awesome! Oh, I love stuff like this. So basically, in most situations, this is just going to be an idyllic forest. Like, look at it. It's nice and green. You got the pine trees. It's just got this chill vibe. There's a hill off in the distance. But if you show up on the day of a solstice, which totally has that harmony with nature concept. Then a castle shows up, and you can actually see it there in the background. That would be amazing if you had been to this area before, and then you found an ancient text that said, show up here on the summer solstice, and a castle will appear. And it's like, what? The castle of the ancient ones. Dude, what an awesome idea for an adventure. How long does the castle stick around? Will you ever be able to escape? Where does the castle go? So many interesting questions. Next up, we've got this forest that says, as you venture deeper under the boughs of Neverwinter Wood, arrows in a tree trunk suggest you might not be welcome. All right, this one's a little more straightforward, right? You can see actually the tree with a number of arrows stuck in it. This really gives the idea of you're traipsing into elven territory, and they're not going to look too kindly on it. The artwork looks nice. You got the forest in the foreground. You got a snowy mountain cap in the background. I dig it. And then we've got, look at these weird trees. As monsters from the Underdark rampage across the world above, you've delved deep underground to determine what has driven them upwards. Oh, this is a forest in the Underdark. That's neat. And the idea of crazy beasts that normally only reside underground coming out squinting into the sun and venting their rage on beings all around them, or just trying to escape. Imagine something as dangerous as an Umber Hulk comes tearing up out of the ground and then like just runs off in fear. You're going to wonder, yo, what is down there in the Underdark that is causing this level of commotion? I like that. That's really cool, man. D&D has some really awesome flavor overall, doesn't it? Like, this Evolving Wilds look great. Anyways, obviously we've covered all the cards we had to cover today. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the lands of Dungeons and Dragons, because normally, like I said, I don't do this, but I found these lands to be really compelling and enjoyable. Each land is like a feast for the imagination. So that makes them special to me, and I hope to see more lands like this in the future. Let me know your thoughts, my friends. Glad to have you here. Big shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you for supporting my channel. And I will see all of you, my friends, for the next video.